So excited to speak to our guest today. She is the co-founder of Skin Click, and she's also based in South Carolina. Please help me to introduce Claire.
Hey, thanks for having me. I
Thank you.
am so excited to be here.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you for being here. I have so many questions for you. So let's jump right in.
Hi, my name is Jonathan McLean, and I'm the founder and CEO of McLean Aesthetics.
Welcome to the dark side.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Great,
So
great, great.
I'm Claire O'Brien. I'm a nurse practitioner, and I'm one of the co-founders of the Skin Click. Been practicing aesthetics for a few years. I have a head and neck background, so was always kind of in the facial world, and actually used to do like medical Botox and neuromodulators and things like that for different conditions in my cancer clinic. So it's kind of a natural progression to where what I'm doing now.
Awesome, awesome. So actually, I wanted to start off the interview by kind of speaking a little bit about that. I found that so interesting. So you used to be a cancer provider, and then you switch in transition into really the aesthetic industry. Tell us, how did you
Yeah,
get from there? Like two different
I
spectrums.
know.
How did you?
I know it's so different. So, as a nurse practitioner or a PA, you have a general training, um, and then you kind of subspecialize if you don't do like primary care. And so I started out in a surgical specialty, surgical oncology, and then moved into a little bit even more of a subspecialty, which is head and neck oncology.
Yeah.
So like anything above the clavicles that we was what we would treat. Um, and did a lot of, salivary gland surgeries, oral cancers, things like that. A lot of skin cancers, are on the face
Mhm.
and head and neck. And in our practice, we had facial plastics reconstruction was part of that. And then just naturally, when you're cutting out a parotid gland, you're right along the facial nerve. And so really got to know the anatomy in those areas. And then, what happens when you're knocking a nerve out or when you're cutting a certain portion of this muscle, what happens here? Because with
Mhm.
cancer, it's very different, right? Like with aesthetics, your goal is to keep everything looking the same or better or improve it. And with cancer, your goal is to get rid of the cancer. And so you really don't
Yeah.
care what happens aesthetically. I mean, you care, but it's you can't focus on what happens aesthetically when you're trying to save someone's life. Head and neck cancer is pretty deadly. So, and then, like I said, we actually did a lot of Botox. Like if you knocked out a facial nerve on one side, you'd want to be kind of trying to figure out how can we even it out when the person was through with their active treatment. Um, and we use Botox to minimize the salivary gland issues that people would have, things like that. Masseter hypertrophy was, 10 years ago. We would like cut the masseter out. So now, now it's great that you don't have to do that anymore. But really, after a few years of that, I had two little kids, and I was in an academic cancer center, and a husband who's also a very busy physician and travels a lot for work, and just needed a change. Because with cancer, everything's an emergency all the time. I mean, it's someone's life, and so it was just time for me to move on. And Sarah, or Dr. Allen, my co-founder, was just starting the practice, and she lived about an hour away from me, and she was coming to Charleston to inject friends and family, and she said, "Would you want to do this for me here?" And I just can't keep coming down here. And I said, "Yeah, I mean, I already know a little bit about injecting. Let me, you know, we'll train more." And my husband is very entrepreneurial. He is an MD MBA. He loves that, and so he said, "Why don't we talk about being with her in the business, and see where this can go." And so she and I became essentially became co-founders then, and it's been a lot of fun ever since. So that's how I got here.
Wow, amazing, amazing. That's a lot. I have a lot of different questions based off of that, but that's definitely a
Yeah,
very intriguing story for sure, for sure. So how did you meet Dr. Sarah Allen? Like how did I always ask that question because with
yeah,
co-founders, it's almost like a marriage. So how did you know, hey,
yeah.
I could partner with this person long term?
So I met her when I was a nurse at the VA. I got to meet all the residents because it's such a small hospital. All the residents from the big hospital across the street would come rotate through. So I met her there. And, so knew her from that. And then she actually grew up down the street from my husband. And then, I mean, if you have met or talked to her, she is the most, which you had her on your show a couple weeks ago. So she's just the most kind, caring, like the epitome of like Southern genteel. She is just a wonderful person. So, I mean, it was an easy decision. It's probably a harder decision for her than it was for me. But no, she's a sweet, sweet, sweet person. So it's been great. But it is
Okay,
like a
yeah.
marriage. We
Yeah.
call each other Blanche and Rose. So it is like a marriage. But
What are some things that you've learned so far since really being a business owner of a really big company and in a new field
yeah.
and that you weren't even used to?
The biggest thing that you learn, I think to me, that's just still continues to be a shock is how many people are doing things, particularly in this industry, just the wrong way. Meaning from a business standpoint or a regulatory standpoint, certainly we're not doing everything perfectly, like from a business standpoint, but you just see so many people doing things that you're like, how are they, how are they doing that? Knowing, I mean, we spend so much of our time digging into the laws and the regulation in each state that we operate in. We have so many attorneys. So that's just been very eye-opening. I have a couple of people that are kind of friends and mentors, colleagues in the business as well, that we talk about this, just like seeing people um, just skate by. And that's really frustrating as a medical provider. So I'd say that's a big one. And I mean, I think just having grace for ourselves as business owners, we're going through a big um, change in our company this week, and having grace for ourselves of like, we're doing the best that we can. Neither of us have ever done this before.
Mhm.
And so just trying to have grace for each other and lead our team through that. So but the learning curve is immeasurable when you go from medicine to business, because we're not taught any of that, in any training. I don't care what your training is, unless you did an MD MBA, you have no business training whatsoever. So it's huge learning curve.
Mhm. How are you able to pick that stuff up, or what are some resources that people can use to kind of pick that stuff up?
So gosh, that's definitely a better question for Dr. Allen, because she does so
Mhm.
much more of the business part. I care, my brain works more in like the creative space and the brand and the branding and the marketing social aspect.
Mhm.
But she always is touting the Stanford series. But I mean, I do love, there's a podcast called How I Built This that is so great. Go back to the early ones. How I Built This is really helpful. Just hearing what other people have been through. But the Stanford series is great. And then honestly, just connecting and talking to other business owners is so helpful. And just hearing what other people have been through and what worked for them and what they, what didn't work for them, what they needed to do. Um, but it's like putting together an airplane, like while you're flying in the air, so it's a lot of learning on the job and learning as you go.
Yeah, no, I can definitely understand. I love that you said that you're more of like a creative and your partner's more of like the financial or other side of it, because I
Yeah.
find it very interesting when the two partners are different minded, they tend to succeed a lot better. When they're the same, focusing on the same task, and it's
Yeah.
like tend to butt heads. As far as the
Yeah.
creative, yeah, as far as the creative side, what are some things that are trending right now or helping businesses to grow?
I mean, gosh, social media, I would just encourage everybody, if your business is not on social media, you are missing out. And I know people are very resistant to it because it feels so weird and it doesn't come naturally to everybody.
Yeah.
But it really is such a huge place for your patients. And it's different than anywhere else in medicine. I'm not going to get on social media and look up my cardiologist, but I am going to get on and look up my injector or their practice and see what their work looks like and what's their style, what's their aesthetic. And my aesthetic may not be, for the next person, and that's fine. And vice versa. It's very personal. Aesthetic medicine is very personal and very style driven. So I mean, I just always encourage people to really, lean into social media, and that's a big focus of ours coming up for the next quarter, just looking at what we're doing, different agencies. Where's our strategy? Where do our marketing dollars go? Always testing that and looking at what's working now. But I mean, when you start, it's free marketing, and
Mhm.
it's there, and as much time as you can spend on it is as what you'll get out of it.
Yeah, no, I can definitely understand that. What's unique you would say about the Skin Click?
So we're the only nationwide concierge aesthetics practice. So what that means is we are a practice that comes to you. We go to your home or to your office. And because that's all we do, that's completely our focus from start to finish. So everything that we do is knowing, okay, we're outside of the traditional office setting. So we carry very specific safety equipment. We carry very specific medical malpractice insurance. We love RNs and estheticians, but we don't hire them because of the laws and the regulations in each state. Typically, it's prohibited to do what we're doing unless you're a provider like a PA, MD, or nurse practitioner. So our practice model is incredibly unique, and we've really honed in on creating a safe environment wherever you go, and we know that we're capable of doing that, and so that's what we do. And it's very unique, and we know that.
Awesome, awesome. Yes, it is very, very unique. Now, I'm sure you hire tons of providers. You have so many locations that you're in. What do you look for in a great provider? Like, what stands out to you?
Yeah, it's different. It's different in aesthetics
Mhm.
because you've really got to be able to connect with your patients. And so initially, and we train everyone that works for us, whether they have experience or not. We train everybody. And so we've had lots of people come on and be successful. And then, lots of people were like, I really this model is not going to work for me. But we really look for people who are able to connect with their patients, who have good community engagement and who are really personable. Of course, they have to meet, certain criteria skill wise and be able to be a good injector. But those are things that you can teach, and those skills, come with time and they get better with time. But it's really hard to teach someone how to really connect with their patients, and that's what a lot of aesthetics is connecting and finding out you know, what's really going on? What do we really need to work on? And do you really need that filler, or are you just upset because something else in your life is going on? It's very different, and you don't necessarily do that in other parts of medicine. Um, so we're always kind of honing who who is the right type of provider for us. And it's not for everybody, and that's totally fine. I mean, everything's not for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're always honing that in.
Aside from skill set, what are some major red flags when when you speak to candidates? You're like, absolutely not.
I will say, I mean, for us, the biggest red flags are when people talk about, um, like, what's my discount going to be? And like, what can I get, what can I get out of this? Because there's so many people that want to get into aesthetics right now because it can be certainly a great place to make money, and it can be a lot of fun. And certainly, there are lots of people who love to get aesthetic treatments. That doesn't mean that they're the right person to give them for you. So, I mean, a major red flag is, and you can tell when somebody's like, "What am I going to get out of this?" Like, "What's your skincare discount?" And like, "How much do I pay when I get Botox?" And that when that's kind of the first thing that they're talking about, it's like, I don't know that this is the right, thing for you, because it's hard work. I mean, you got to build your own practice, and that's a lot of work. So,
Yeah. I wanted you to touch on, you said community engagement, and I think that's a big point. I hone in on it a
yeah,
lot when I speak to candidates when I'm recruiting them. But I wanted you to
yes.
touch on kind of what that means to you.
So we see our most successful providers are engaged in their community, whether that is school, alumni associations, whether it's church or whatever your religious background. How are you involved in your community?
Mhm.
And I think the reason for that is, like, again, going back to how personal aesthetics is, you're really building a relationship with these people, and it's a trust that's it's so interesting, right? Because you have to trust, like, any of your providers, like any cardiologist, nephrologist, like, obviously you trust
Mm.
them, But this is like a weird, different dynamic. Like you're trusting them with your face and you're like the way, the way you outwardly appear. So it's just different. But our most successful providers are really engaged in their communities, and what that can look like a million different things. We just hired this like wonderful gal named Gwen, and she like does local stand up, and she's in all these different comedy groups. And so she has like all these like women comedians who are like, wait, we want to do this, and we just like didn't know what to do, and can you make us like, I still have to move my facial muscles, but like I don't want to have all these wrinkles. And Gwen, like, how can you help us? Little things like that, that whatever your community involvement looks like, I think is really important in aesthetics, and it has been for us.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. There's so many companies popping up, but I think what really separates people that have like crazy amounts of business and just people that are just in it for a short periods of time is the connection, is being
Well,
able to
you
connect with
care.
people. Yeah.
You care about your community, and your community knows that, right? So there are plenty of big chain med spas who do great work, but at the end of the day, are they really connected to their community, or are they just a storefront in that city? And I think those are where you see really standout chains or franchises or whatever you want to call it, is when that particular brand is really invested in the community. Then people want, they want to come there and give you their dollars. They're going to give them to somebody. So it just says that you care about their community as much as they do.
I agree. I agree 100%. Now, you did speak about training. You said even if a provider's trained, they still go through a training process. Why is
Yeah.
that by chance?
I mean, aesthetics is very subjective, and we learned quickly that you can read a resume and you can put whatever you want on the resume. But we want what we do to be standardized, and we really want for people to know, if I go to somebody in Dallas, Texas, or Atlanta, Georgia, I'm going to have the same or similar experience and training level and skill level. And you just, you don't know what someone's rules have been. A lot of practices have different safety standards in place, and there's just it's so subjective. Everything in aesthetic medicine is completely subjective, right? So they may have come from somewhere that's like, oh yeah, I mean, you can do 30 in the frontalis, sure, like dose them up, just make sure you give them 50 in the glabella. And I don't know, I mean, I don't, that's not probably usually appropriate. I'm trying to think of a good example of like why, but our training also is, part of our training is not just the neurotoxin, or depends on what they're doing, if it's neurotoxin or dermal filler. But I mean, a big part of our training is you're in the home creating that safe, clean environment. I'm not going to say sterile because nobody's working in a sterile environment, but we'll say clean. But so that's part of our training as well, is just how is this different, and what does this look like from our practice perspective. So yeah, we that's our standard now. We used to kind of try to decipher someone's portfolio and resume, and do we need to retrain them? And then we just found, we really want to make sure that this person is on our same standard and we're all on the same page, and just get that out of the way. So now everybody that comes to work for us, whether they're experienced or not, goes through our training.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think training is just the epitome of aesthetic injecting. Honestly, I feel like you have to continuously train to be the best, or to
Right.
really provide the best education for your patients. Like you said a minute ago,
Right.
people are coming into this industry, they're like, I want Botox, but I don't even know what Botox is. I don't know what, you
Exactly.
know, this is, or what I want to get done, but I'm interested in this field. So
Yeah.
I think training is definitely necessary.
Yeah.
How much do you spend, or how many conferences do you go to a year to kind of re-educate yourself?
Gosh, it just depends. I mean, we just had a conference in February with Dr. Nina Deep. We had a cadaver lab, and a couple of other trainers came in and did that hands-on training. And then I'm going to scale in May, and then I'm
Nice.
moving in June. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to do anything in June. Are you coming to scale in Nashville?
Yes, it's on my list, so I'm definitely should
Oh,
be there.
good.
Yeah.
I think it's such a good conference. It's like no pomp and circumstance. It's not about who's who and who's wearing what. It's just like good medical education. So I love scale, and I live here, so it's easy for me. Um, And then I think you just kind of learn as you go. Like we did scale last year and did some of the pre-courses, and we're like, nah, we've had money better spent elsewhere, but love scale. I'm trying to do aesthetic masterminds this year, but I don't know if they're going to let me in. We'll see. And then have got a couple of, industry sponsored things where they're coming to us. So we try to do that quarterly. But I mean, use your reps as a resource. They're there for you, and you can always piggyback on other people's trainings if they're going to be in your area. So it's the resources are definitely there. If you feel like you can't pay for a training all the time, reach out to your reps. I mean, there's a lot there. I just did another Radius training with a gal here that I loved to do a little bit more hyper dilute work. So excited about that. I loved that. So sometimes it's one-on-one or through our reps in industry, and then sometimes it is going to a conference, but it just depends.
Yeah, no, I can definitely understand that. Now you have your own podcast, which is super exciting. Tell us a little bit
I
about that.
do. So I have the DabbleCo podcast, and I started it right before COVID started, and it's been a lot of fun. I try to get one out weekly, but I'm on a little hiatus right now. I think I'm going to go into like a seasons type of format. But I talk about everything across healthcare. I mean, sometimes I talk about aesthetics, but I really like to be able to chat about everything. Yeah, so come find me there.
Super cool. And with Apple and Spotify.
Yeah, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever they are, yes, is where I am.
What made you want to start the podcast?
Gosh, so I started my Instagram 4 or 5 years ago because I just felt like I kept seeing medical misinformation everywhere, and just kind of wanted to dive into that a little bit, and it was fun. And then I like talking. I don't mind talking. I know that's uncomfortable for a lot of people, but I don't mind it. And so somebody just suggested, I should start a podcast. I'm like, all right, let me just see what that looks like. And then it was fun. It was just fun for me. And I found it very like natural way to communicate and way to get my message across. And I've had really good feedback, and it's been good. So yeah, I don't mind talking.
Awesome. What trends are you seeing right now in the market as far as
Oh,
aesthetics?
yes. Aesthetics, I would say biostimulators, right? So Sculptra and Radius, really blowing up. Personal fan of Radius, like them both, but just like the profile of Radius a little bit, a little bit different. So biostimulators not instead of, but in just a kind of a different placeholder than dermal fillers. So I think it'll be really interesting to see what happens with that as more and more people use more and more biostimulators. Definitely seeing people back off of that totally frozen look, which is very refreshing. I think when Botox first came out, 20 years ago, everybody was you were either frozen or you weren't. And kind of in that same vein, we're seeing people, we use a lot of Xeomin in our practice, and Xeomin's always given me a more natural look for my patients. And I think, Botox brand is kind of your grandmother's neurotoxin, right? And it was the first to market, and it's a great product, but it definitely gives that more frozen look. So we're seeing people lean into Xeomin and Dysport more, biostimulators more, moving away from some other products on the market. I think PDO threads will be really interesting. I'm interested to see what'll keep happening with that. Thankfully, moving away from the BBL trend, so that's one. But yeah, it's a little bit more natural, which is great.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm starting to see that a lot too, honestly, especially in the South
Yeah,
Florida area, which I feel like it's almost like the testing market for aesthetics.
yeah,
So
yep.
I agree with you. Who are some key opinion leaders that you can suggest for the audience to follow to learn more, besides yourself?
Yeah, me. No, I'm kidding. I honestly don't share that many opinions. You know who I really respect is Dr. Subio. I just think not only is he freaking hysterical, but he just puts out really, I feel, honest information. I think you have to be really careful because, when you're first starting and you see these big name injectors and you just don't realize they are often, representatives of these companies, or they're paid speakers or paid trainers. And not that anybody's dishonest, but it's a little bit hard to kind of wade through why someone's giving an opinion. So I love Subio. I just think he's really, really honest. I love Rana Kennelly. Hope I said that right. I think Rana's really great. I think Josh Davis has done a really nice job of, after everything he went through last year, I think he's done a really nice job of kind of showing us who he really is, and kind of what the aesthetics industry did to him. And I think he kind of saw that and experienced it, and then kind of came back into this, different person of like who he really is. So I think Josh is really interesting. I mean, there's so many there's so many, and nobody's like a bad follow or any. I mean, I just think it's really important to kind of know, like, okay, who's saying what and why. Just use your discretion when you're following people, and think about who they train for and who they work for, and all of that, which is totally fine. Just always thinking about the why.
I definitely can understand that and agree with that. But thank you so much, Claire, for sitting down with me, speaking more about the
Yeah.
aesthetic industry. Tell everybody where they can find you and what you got planned next.
Thank you for having me. So I am on Instagram and TikTok. I'm at Claire O'Brien NP, which is ClaireObryan NP. My company is called The Skin Click. So we're at The Skin Click across, everything. My podcast is the DabbleCo podcast. And yeah, you can find me in any of those places. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Until next time, goodbye.
Bye.